to the Berg Podcast. Thanks for joining us today. Today it's Ford and I. Ford, say hi.
Hey, how's it going?
Hey, and today we're talking a little bit about why construction. And if you know anything about Ford's story, which we've talked about here on the podcast before, you know,
Some of it's true.
some of which is true. Don't believe everything you hear on the podcast. But some of that story includes early on in Ford's career, his exposure to blue collar lifestyle, working hard in the field, doing some clearing, right?
Clearing firewood, anything related to that type deal.
Yep. And then deciding to go to college.
You want to go get educated.
Right. Exactly. And then
Go get a job that had to put a tie around my neck.
you're looking for something a little less dirty, maybe, potentially. But then going from that being, for 99% of the way through your college career and deciding,
Couple classes short.
deciding, hey, this isn't what you want to do for the rest of your life, right? And I know from my prior experiences, the thing that we talk about when it comes to like the trades and blue collar is a lot of times like parents aren't super excited to hear that their kids want to go work in construction, right?
It's one of those things that, on one side, like people that are in it kind of have this like me against the world type scenario because that's kind of how they feel with people kind of, parents like, oh no, we talk about it multiple times how kids, they love playing with the small equipment, the miniature versions of what we do for a living. And then at some point that transitions to something else unrelated. And then they go for more education and something else unrelated. And then 20 years later, they're a mid-level manager at, some huge corporation. That's
Right.
kind of what, education sometimes takes many forms and facts. And a lot of those certain education tracks kind of lead you to just being one of very many.
Yeah, for sure. I can say from my own personal life, I grew up in a household where my parents hadn't gone to college. My dad did finish college later on in life. They always kind of said that cliche, like, you don't want to be that guy, right? You see guy working the road crew, like, go to school. You don't want to be that guy, right?
Even though your dad's blue collar too. That's
my
the
dad's
crazy part, right?
Right. My dad's a blue collar guy. He loves getting his hands dirty. He's an engineer by trade, and loves like, manipulating things, etc. But they were always kind of like, that's not what you want to do with your life. And what's funny for me, at least, is like, I don't know, my every job I worked leading up to finishing college was like a laboring position, right? I worked for landscape companies. I worked in the service industry.
You made some great sandwiches down at the
at the deli
at the
down
deli.
there. Yeah. And I think that like people in general kind of get scared by the idea that is their kid going to wind up looking like a road cone in a dirt project somewhere. And is that how they want to spend their life? But, I think we've got a different perspective.
Yeah. Well, I do. And I think the interesting thing is that, we can run stats and we can say about how, jobs are great and there's actually, they can make good money if that's what people's concerns are. But the reality is that it's not it's more like a higher level to me. It's that like, not just us in the dirt world, but plumbers, mechanics, like this is how everything actually happens.
Right.
Yeah. That's the neat part is that, if my mechanic, not here at the company, but like if my guy that does my personal car, if he goes on vacation, my car's not getting fixed. Like,
Right. Yeah.
There's nobody else that's going to do that kind of thing. And so, I look at it a little bit more globally as like the trades in general. Like you've seen my hats that say support blue collar, things of that nature. And it's just that, we've done a disservice to ourselves over the years in how we portrayed ourselves possibly because it really didn't matter before. It wasn't really a, us against the world thing. And then it's kind of come this like battle cry of us against the world. And I don't even think that's correct because it kind of And so you can't be both. You can't be in both worlds. And that's not even true. Like
Right. Yep.
it's across the board, but people, your air conditioning goes out at, midnight when it's 95 degrees out. You're real happy for that gentleman that shows up in that van with the uniform on that is going to hopefully get you back cooled again.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Um, I think it's a problem in some regards with our education system, right? I'm a school board member, and and we talk about this a lot, actually. Sort of this multiple paths out of high school, because high schools for a long time have been machines that are their purpose is to get kids to continue going to education, continue going to college, whatever it is. And it was in a weird way. You look at high school equivalency test. I can't say that word right now. High
For
school
those the
testing,
GEDs, right? That's what we'll call it.
um, and they were all designed to test a kid's readiness to go to college. And if they couldn't meet those marks, or they didn't have a specific ratio of kids going on to college, it was considered a failure, right? And that's simply not the case. Not every kid should go to college. In fact, a lot of kids shouldn't go to college. It's not the right use of their time or their money or their parents' money or whatever the case may be.
And the cost of it's getting out of control too. That's another challenge. And we can go on a
Yeah.
whole diatribe into that. But the other thing is I think you have to look at your demographics of your area. I mean, where you're a school board member, there is a lot of small businesses. There is a lot of opportunities to do other things. Maybe in certain school districts that's not the case, but if you look around, and we always joke about if you go to the Wawa up here in town and you sit there between 5 and 7 a.m., you will see most of the building industry drive past down 23 heading east, probably a large majority. Most of them jump on the turnpike, different things like
Right.
that. But
Yep.
and a lot of them are maybe more conservatives of Amish and Mennonites too, doing that. And you see the pickup trucks with 5 or 6 guys flying down the road. But there's a lot of work that we're on the outside edge of a city. Like if you say there's like rings of a city, right? There's the city, and then there's like the initial suburbs, and then there's the next suburbs, and then you're out to us out
Yep.
here.
Right.
But our area probably has more blue collar people per area than some because we can provide the services needed for those people that live on the other rings.
Right. Yep. For sure. Yeah. Um,
I think the thing what you're saying with like the school district is that, funding comes in that way. They're calculated on that. The ratings for school district is how many go off to certain types of schools, not just all that kind of thing.
yeah.
It's structured that
What were
way.
their scores on certain tests and things that are only designed really to test them of their ability to go on to college? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly.
Well, I think the other thing that the trades have kind of, to a point, had kind of become is like if you fail to do the other thing, instead of
Right.
being like, this is the choice, it's, well, if you can't do that, you can always fall back on this.
Yeah. I've got my oldest is in college, and we had some of these conversations prior to him deciding to go to school and saying, is college the right option for you? Is it meet your goals? Is it set you up for success the way you hope to? And he did ultimately decide that that's the right path for him. And not that there's not room for change, like your situation, but it seems to be the right path for him so far. And my next son, he's 16. He's kind of pondering those things now too, and saying, "What's right for me?" Like he's going to be a junior this year in high school, so he's at that stage of life where he's trying to start to figure out what comes next. And he's actually found that like he loves like the the instant gratification of being able to look at something he's done and have that like proud, like I did that kind of moment. So it's been interesting to have those conversations with him because he's got a different set of aspirations than maybe my older son did. But so he's kind of starting to kind of think like, well, is there a place for me that maybe does have some sort of secondary post or high school education, but doesn't necessarily mean that I'm gonna go
For
off
4
to
years.
be there for 4 years, or even if it is for 4 years, how can I take that and apply it to some of the things that I really enjoy doing that he's seen in, working for doing some work for us and doing some work where he's been pretty hands on.
Well, I think the other neat thing about construction in general or any of these trades is the other part is that it's a low barrier to entry to be an entrepreneur. So
Hmm.
if someone wants to be, a guy in a pickup truck can run his own business and be successful at it, certain types of industries, you're in the defense industry, things like that. That's not happening, right? Whereas in construction, a couple friends, they all need a deck built in their backyard. And you know what? By the end of the summer, you might have a business with a magnet on the side of your truck or
Sure.
something like that.
Yeah.
Whereas other industries aren't quite that accessible for everybody. And I think construction allows for people to try that. Some people, maybe that's not their thing after a while, but a lot of people have the dream of, I want to be my own boss. And then they find out what that really means. And that's a whole
Right.
nother episode to that perspective of certain
Mhm.
levels. But, you know, that is the opportunity. People can try it for a little bit, what maybe, and then they go work for somebody, whatever. But that's, part of the thing I think with the education system that's so challenging is that in general, someone that's 17 to 18 years old is being pushed into a track that they supposedly decided because they knew a friend in there, they knew their dad was in there. They have a very small glimpse of what reality is. And then they're going to go spend 4 years going down that road. And then all of a sudden at the end, they realize maybe they aren't enjoying it, but they're too deep in to be able to kind of make an adjustment to it.
Yeah. You said something a minute ago about um, sort of like the perception that you people go into the trades, or used to at least go into the trades if they didn't have other options,
Right.
right? And what's really funny about that when you talk about that statement, for me at least, is how highly skilled the trades are. Now, you're right. There is a low barrier to entry because it doesn't take a lot of skill to find an entry level position in the trades. But when's the last time like you personally took on any like extensive plumbing project at your house?
Not very much anymore
You're
because
right. Yeah. Like tell me about low skill, right? Right. So like or like electricity for me, I'm like, no thanks. I don't know enough about that. I'm gonna get somebody a professional in here who knows what they're doing.
yeah.
Like all of the things that as homeowners, small business owners, community members that we're like, yeah, we're not touching that because we have no freaking idea how to do it, right? Yeah. So I think it's interesting to me when people are like, "Oh, those are low skill jobs," and yeah, except try it. Yeah,
Yeah.
please show me you doing it.
Yeah. Well, I think the biggest thing with all of the trades is that the education, they don't call it that.
Right.
They call it on the job training. They call it,
Apprenticeship.
apprenticeships.
Hmm.
They don't
Hmm.
have that vernacular that matches to higher education. But the reality is that some of them, I mean, like the amount of math that runs through here on a daily basis from the accounting side to the geometry to the takeoffs and the GPS stuff. The math there is way above my head even, and it's amazing. But there's so much of that involved in it. It's just that um, the perception and the way of learning it is not maybe a traditional way.
Right. Well, it's not. It's never glamorized,
Right.
right? And, people are like, "Oh, what college are you going to?" Right? Because it's impressive, right? But no one ever says like, "Oh, what skill did you learn? What what class at your the trade school that you're going to set you up for success?" Like
Right.
no one that talks about it for whatever reason in that manner.
Well, during high school, my mom set me up with multiple internships, like 3 to 6 months.
Hmm.
I worked for an electrical contractor. I worked for a drywaller. I worked for a car rehabber, we'll call them. They made like cut cars apart and made new cars out of them.
Oh,
And then I worked for a refrigeration company. And, so I can dabble in the electric thing, but it's still not my favorite thing to do.
right.
I've changed out more outlets. The one job we were on, we were redoing a hotel down in Westchester, and we had to change all the outlets out. So we just sat on buckets and just worked our way around the room, cutting all the old outlets out and putting new ones back in. 96% of the time, the electric was turned off, but there's a couple of them you get that little bumpy or wake
Every
you up.
once in a while,
Yeah, a
yeah.
little extra caffeine in the end of your day there. But it provided those actual, because I have a nephew that about ready to go to college and says he wants to be a mechanical engineer, which
Hmm.
is really cool because I mean he seems to have a mind that works along the engineering path, but he has no one in his life that is a mechanical engineer, so he doesn't even really know what
what that means.
what that
Hmm.
means. It's just that he likes science and the math piece. So that's kind of the direction that maybe he took some tests at school when they're kind of pushing him that way. And I was really like, biting my tongue because I'm just like, can I connect you with someone maybe I know that you can actually see what that means? I mean, do you want to be behind a draft table or nowadays it's all CAD, but do you want to be a CAD? Like, what exactly? And I couldn't get out of him because he just didn't have any reference point to what that actually meant.
Right.
But I mean, he's basing his college choice over who has the best engineering things. I'm just like,
And he
but
might get there and find out that that's not right. Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
And I just feel bad for him because that's like, his parents are professionals and they're in a world where their kids can't ever go with them and see what they do every day. He's just not
Right.
been exposed to stuff. So that kind of circles back to my 18-year-old thing is you're making decisions. Some people don't have a frame of reference to what anything else is. It's just that, well, someone told me, so I'm going to go follow that path. And it's like, well, what, like, have you tried anything else? Have you done anything
Have
else?
you experienced that
Yeah.
at all? Right. Yeah. Even the thing that you think
Yeah.
you like,
Yeah.
have you experienced that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I can understand you go for a day or something, like follow a guy around. They take you to like the highlights of the day, maybe a couple of meetings. But I'm like, do you spend 3 months following them around, realizing what day to day really means in that
Hmm.
level? And I think that that's always an interesting perspective that then they're too late in until they realize that it's not what they're hoping for. And so then they're kind of stuck in a path that they might not be fully um, excited about. And that's
Yeah.
always a challenge for them.
Yeah. Now, one of the things that I think that we've done here that sort of highlights how we value those types of things is that community involvement piece, right? Now, we've been able to get involved with some of the local CTC programs. We brought some kids in for internships, which I think is important. It sort of speaks to that idea that like let's give these kids a shot at trying this stuff before they get to a spot where they've made a decision that they're going to regret or are going to make a decision. Um, I think another way is Dan is involved in that board over at Thaddeus Stevens.
Yeah.
So
We've
those.
had some high school interns come through here.
Yep. Yep.
Some of them have uh, not been sick of us and hung out for a lot longer.
Some of
But
them stayed, right?
yes,
Yeah, yeah.
exactly.
Some of them stayed. Some of them they found out it wasn't the right thing, and that's okay. That's what it's about.
Yeah. I mean, a guy I know that does a podcast, he talks about, he's like, if you think you want construction, even if you're like, okay, that's my spot, he said, every year during high school or during college, depending on what you're going to do, he said, go work for a different company just to experience different pieces because we are so all highly specialized.
Right.
I'm using air quotes, which doesn't work on a podcast, but
They can't see that.
no.
Yeah.
But I mean, there is definitely different. You go work at a quarry, you can run the same piece of equipment that we have, but you're doing a different type of work, or you're, seeing the different types of things. Some people do highways, some people do landfills. We do a bunch of different things here compared
Right.
on some other people specialize a little bit more, but there is different companies and what type of work they do, how they do the work. You know, in our business, there is no one size fits all. And so that's where having people, maybe they learn something they don't want, which is more valuable almost than what they
Sometimes,
do
right?
want.
Then what you do want. Yeah. Yeah. A lot of times the what you don't like leads you to what you do like. Yeah. Or want to do.
Process of
So
elimination, basically, right?
yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Well, I know I'm not going to do that. I'm staying away from those. So
Yeah.
yeah.
So no, I think that people need to, you know, we joke about it a lot because we're agricultural out here, and you talk to people and they don't even understand where milk comes from, right? They just go to the
Go to the
grocery
grocery
store.
store.
Yeah, I picked three
Yeah.
different kinds. One's more watered down than the others, or whatever the rules are on it.
Yeah.
Now there's 18 different kinds, but in the old days it was like
Yeah.
there was three kinds.
Right.
Now there's kinds that aren't even coming from animals, which don't even get me started on
Yeah.
that
How
stuff.
do you milk an almond? My daughter asked me this
Mike Rowe said
recently.
that Mike Rowe goes, "There's no small nipples on almonds."
Yeah. She's like, they sing the song in the commercial, but I still don't know how they get milk from an almond. I think they're just blending it up.
Just grind it really fine into powder and
Yeah,
mix
it
some
becomes
water with.
powder, add water and
Yeah,
milk. I don't. That's not milk. That's I don't know what you call that, but
yeah. So I mean, we grew up in this area where, like, when I was a kid, we were friends with our Amish neighbors, and we'd go down there and we play broom sock, which is basically you wrap up burlap bags and throw them at each other, kind of like a dodgeball, but in the haystacks. And so you might fall in a haystack, all that kind of stuff. But when you're done, you go down to the big old aluminum or stainless tank. You dip in and you drink the raw milk. And that doesn't even, you got to stir it around a little bit to kind of knock the top off. But you saw the cows, you saw them out in the field. You understood the process of how things happen. Construction's the same type of thing in that there's a full process. A lot of people come work in a big, beautiful skyscraper. To them, it's all been there since the day they started. They didn't see the whole process through.
Yeah.
And that's one thing we get to do is see a process from
See
start to
things.
finish.
Yeah. See things come from nothing. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Which is a lot of the reason why people love the industry.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think we have to, I mean, there's some people that are in the industry like, I don't want my kids doing this. It's like, well, you've done great. You've enjoyed it. I mean, yeah, I
Right.
understand.
You've
Maybe
seen
wake
the
up early in the
fruits.
morning
Yeah.
isn't wonderful and you'd rather,
Well,
maybe that's not their cup of tea anymore, but it's just an interesting thing because it's like there is so many varieties. It's not a one size fits all. It allows for a lot of people, a lot of growth because it is a
right.
fast paced industry.
Yep.
And I think, we've spent a lot of time on it. It's probably going to continue to be what a part of our, you know, forward looking to try and help people kind of understand what this is.
Yeah. Yep. For sure. No, I totally agree.
Because there's a small pie of people that do what we do. And we need more people in it because, we can go to a neighboring competitor and maybe outbid them for a person, but then they need a person still. And then they outbid. And it just turns into this whole nightmare where it's like if we get new people in to mix with people that have experience and they can learn and do their education on the job site and they get paid for it versus having to pay for it, there's a lot of opportunity for them.
Right. Yep. Absolutely.
So, I mean, in short, it's just that, I knew how I grew up in this world and I think this is the world I'll be in for a very long time. And so it's just like, now it's time to start giving back even more to try and get more people involved versus just like,
Yeah.
we took our piece and we rolled out type of deal.
Yeah. And I think one of the things that we've been doing here in the last 2 years has been trying to do a better job of telling our story, right? Some things with our website, some things with social media, some things with our community involvement. And I think that in some ways is sort of a testament to this, to like the idea that if people don't know, then they make their own assumptions. And if all your assumptions about the dirt world or the trades in general are what somebody told you when you were 8 or 9 years old about you don't want to do that for the rest of your life, then of course you're going to have a bad impression of what this industry looks like. But I think the more that we can shed light on it, the more that we can expose people to the idea that there's a lot of good stories about finding skills, growing those skills, um, being empowered, and not having to go pay for a college education. For the right folks, not everybody, but for the right folks, they need to hear that.
Yeah, I think part of telling our story, which was always a challenge, was that, I mean, we're telling it for our team. We're telling it, for lots of reasons, but part of it is a much bigger, like ridiculous sounding, but it's for the industry as a whole. It's not just for Burke Construction. It's not just for our team. But that our story, which is those people, is not always for those people. It's also for people that maybe just casually follow along, see a truck somewhere, look us up, something like that. But it's trying to help in the bigger sense, construction in any little way we can, which is very small, but any way we can to try and help get the message out in a positive light for people that might, before have had a negative connotation towards what we do.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a good place to wrap it up. I think there's a lot more that could be said about this, and I'm sure we'd love to talk more about it. You hear this and you got questions about the construction industry or why we think that college isn't the right option for everybody. I'm sure either you or I would love to have that conversation with anybody who wants to talk about it. But we'll wrap it up here for now. And
I heard the next one coming up is going to be interesting too, but in a whole different way. So stay tuned for that.
All right. Watch out for the next episode. Thanks for joining us, folks. We look forward to having you back sometime.